Please note these are my personal opinions, and some of the information may or may not be based on facts. Along with, I like to use satirical humor and forgive the language. Now, I'm probably the wrong guy to be telling you this story, but I'm going to tell it nonetheless. See, like this guy here, I'm pretty much a very laid-back, easygoing fella. I live in Margaritaville, Florida. My life's kind of easy. Spending my days listening to Jimmy Buffett, drinking my rum in the sun by the sea, getting in trouble for flirting with very wet and beautiful women that always seem to be around. But I am an American, and as an American, when I smell something that's bad, well, I'm probably going to be looking for a fight. Now, this all started for me back in early November of 2017, just before Thanksgiving, where he was knocking down Bitcoin. Now, Jamie knocking Bitcoin, that's understandable. He's a banker. But he also knocked his daughter and called her his formerly smart daughter publicly because she bought a couple of Bitcoin. Wow, what an asshole. I can't even imagine. What a fucking asshole. I hope he apologized to her, because that Thanksgiving must have sucked. I can see her, and even her sister, and maybe their friends, and hey, Hollywood. And why not? And Danny DeVito, fuck you, because you're such an asshole, Jamie. Yeah, that's an asshole move. But what he's done and the corrupt banking behavior from the past years and our exploded national debt, that's an even bigger asshole move. And it just blows my mind that people don't know this, but they're going to. Now, do yourself a favor and watch this from beginning to end. It's going to go through the numbers, the history. It's going to tell you the whole story. It's also going to offer you a warning of what's going to occur in the future because of this and the effects it's going to have on our everyday lives. You, me, and everybody. And it's going to, again, go through the history and the whys and what has happened and what's going to occur. So anyway, without further ado, here we go. Alright, the history of Bitcoin. Back in August of 2008, the domain name bitcoin.org was registered by Satoshi Nakamoto. And later, that same year, he created the first white paper called Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. Then even later still, in January of 2009, the Bitcoin network actually came into existence after Satoshi Nakamoto mined the first ever block on the chain, known as the Genesis block. Embedded in this coin base of this block is the following text. And you'll see this in the Times clipping here that it's reflected of. The Times, 3rd of January 2009, Chancellor on brink of second bailout for banks. There you go. That's the fuck you to Jamie Dimon and all of the bankers and the reason why Bitcoin came into existence. Now, our forefathers never envisioned the banking and government system going over and restricting our freedom and reducing the quality of our lives for their gain. But that's currently what's happening right now, and that is exactly what Bitcoin looks to solve. It will bring back fairness with blockchain technologies to the everyman. And when I say the everyman, I mean the people. We are the people, and we will rise. The 99%, and we'll do it through the technology available to us, and that's what Bitcoin really represents. So if you want your freedom, you want Bitcoin. And you want to turn away from the Jamie Dimons and the corrupt politicians of the world who make our lives less. And you can see that by the numbers. The numbers go over and tell you what they're doing, nothing else. I mean, the 99%, when you try to basically put them into pens and reduce them to this, well, you're going to have a problem. Because the future, we're not going to accept it anymore. And Bitcoin and blockchain came into existence because of numbers like this, where the bottom 90% own less than 20% of the country's wealth. That's sad. And that basically means, if you go over and take into account everything, that they're putting us into debt and they're taking away our political and economic freedom. And it can't continue. Now, this is debt brought to us by the government and these bankers, and we're going to have to pay for it someday. And this is what you own as Americans. So that bottom, the 99% owns all this debt. I mean, it's crazy. And I rather, if we're going to give money away like this, and spend it on the stock market, great. Give it to somebody like this televangelist who wants to buy his own jet so he could spread the word of God. At least it makes more sense than these crazy fucking bankers. Putting us in enough debt to basically collapse our economy and put us into a depression for the next 10 to 20 years. That is what's going to happen. And that's what I am really worried about, because these numbers are unsustainable. As you're going to see in this clip, these politicians have no clue. Most of them are too old, too corrupt, and spend all their time trying to get reelected, not caring or having any real purpose to be in government other than just to be there to collect a friggin' paycheck. Along with their own egomaniacal self-gratification, it's disgusting.
What should the function of the regulators be? What other areas of oversight would be the most effective for us?
I would like to come away from the hearing today with some ideas on what you think we need to do.
We're here quizzing you. If you were sitting on this side of the dais, what would you do to make our system safer than it is?
Why don't you just put Jamie Dimon in a chair like CeeLo's from The Voice? And if he hears something he likes, boom, you just earned yourself another term in Congress. What is going on with this panel of senators? They're sucking up to Jamie Dimon like they're on J.P. Morgan's payroll.
The biggest campaign donor to many members of the banking committee is J.P. Morgan Chase.
I think Jon Stewart's face kind of says it all. But, you want shock. Let's go over and take a look at how this all came into being and where it's going and where it's going to end up. And I think you'll be in even more shock. Now, this all started with the Glass-Steagall Act being repealed back in the 90s by President Clinton. So this goes across party lines. And this gave the inspiration, because the Glass-Steagall Act basically separated banks from investment houses, the investment sector. So they were separate. Banks were boring for loans and mortgages, and that's it. But the investment sector was exciting with hedge funds and making big money. So when they came together, those bankers became jealous and were like, I want to get paid that kind of money. How do we do that? And bam, you have the further deregulations offered by Bush. He's like, have a party, guys, do what you want. So they created things like mortgage-backed securities and leveraged debt to the umpteenth degree, crazy stuff. And they basically fucked over all of America. Hey, but, at least the bankers were paid, and they were fully supported by our government, obviously. Even if some of them looked like they were suffering from Down syndrome, like I'm not going to mention any names. And then we get an adult in office finally, Obama, right? He's going to go over and change everything. Nope. Not only does he not only change anything, he goes over and gives them a bailout with taxpayers' money. Oh my God. The most crazy thing ever. And it's just basically Larry, Curly, and Moe. It's the Three Stooges. And these guys are just part of a system of sick that we have in the United States. But you get to see the whole picture of how it went down. And, Obama did nothing. He was basically the vacation president, as I like to call him. And he certainly didn't help Occupy Wall Street. When the majority of people rise up and say something's wrong and your government does nothing, then you no longer have a voice as an American. And then there's a problem. And it needs to be corrected.
You can speak
younger generation, the digital natives, for example, aren't going to take it anymore. And they're starting to stand up because they see what's going on. They see that government is corrupt. So they're fighting back. They're going to fight against government and the bankers. And they're going to make their lives better as well as our own, in my opinion.
And the other thing I've always made of Bitcoin, governments, and this is not a technological statement, governments are going to crush it one day. Governments like to know where the money is, who has it, and what you're doing with it. And you, in case you haven't noticed, okay? And governments like to
them liquefy the dead so they could be fed intravenously to the living. And standing there, facing the pure, horrifying precision, I came to realize the obviousness of the truth. What is the Matrix? Control. The Matrix is a computer-generated dream world, built to keep us under control in order to change a human being into this.
No. I don't believe it. It's not possible.
I didn't say it would be easy, Neo. I just said it would be the truth.
Stop. Let me out. Let me out. I want out.
You know, after seeing these numbers, that's exactly how I feel. Let's go over and take a look at how the top 1%, this is actually even less than the top 1%, own over 40% of our nation's wealth. And that's higher than even back before the Great Depression in the 1920s, the late 20s, where we had the crash. It's even higher than that by an exacerbated amount. It's around 40% of our nation's wealth in the hands of just 1%. Now let's go over and take a look at the numbers that the banks don't want you to know. Home ownership in the United States has dropped to the lowest level since the 60s. Now why is that? I mean, our economy's gone up, the stock market's super high. Why is home ownership gone down so much? Well, it's very simple. It's because most Americans can't afford to buy a home. Okay, so they have to rent. And who are they renting from? The 1% and the banks. I mean, I see articles like this, you know, the hot new millennial trend is a repeat of the Middle Ages where there's communal living and they're living together in groups. It's because they have to. Now, this is not just the millennials it's affecting. It's starting to affect the other generations like the Gen Xers. They're having to move back in with their parents or live in communal situations. What the fuck? Now, all the information here is supported by statistics. You can see from the baby boomers to Gen X to the millennials how the prices have increased exponentially over time. All I can say is this is bad, very bad. At some point it's going to get so bad people are going to start asking, how the fuck did I get here? You know, why am I in this situation? And when they start looking for the answers, you know, such as, you know, right here, they're going to find that America's part-time workforce has expanded. A lot of people like these millennials are getting mostly part-time jobs. It's not because they don't want a full-time job. It's because they're forced into working part-time. And the reason they're forced into working part-time is because corporate America wants to make a lot of money, and therefore they're going to eliminate healthcare costs. How are they going to do that? By not having to pay healthcare with full-time employees that's required to by law in the United States. So they give them these shitty part-time jobs and pay them less, and they're expanding their workforces more by doing this so they can make more money. That's what corporate America is doing, the top 1%, and they're doing a really good job. You can see their wealth is increasing. But unfortunately, everybody else is decreasing. Ouch. Now, what has also contributed to this are the tax rates. The tax rates of which the top 1% and the top 0.1%, like Jamie Dimon, have dropped exponentially over the same period of time that our share of debt has increased exponentially, along with an exponential increase in the bank's profits, funny enough, and an exponential increase in the wealth of the 1 or 0.1%, as I like to call it. It's all right there in front of our faces, and the decline of the 90% or the 99%'s wealth. Very sad. I think in the history books, this could be listed as a very corrupt time in both government and banking, and when you're too big to fail and also too big for jail, when you have a whistleblower come out and multiple instances that were criminal in nature and no prosecutions existed. It's like he had a get out of jail free card. Uh, it's sad and ridiculous, but the history books will denote this as well. He is the epitome of what created Bitcoin, the corrupt system that exists in our country, and how it favors the very small minority at the sacrifice of the large majority against the people. And this is going to be denoted in the future. And Bitcoin is a way for us to free ourselves from the oligarchy and the 1% that are controlling and making our lives less, as you've seen in this video. And if what happens with our debt starts to unravel and we get hyperinflation and as the interest rates rise on this incredible amount of debt and we start to sink, you know who to thank for it. The government, Jamie, and the banking system. And when I said our forefathers were against what's going on today, I meant it. And you can see right here, Thomas Jefferson, most of our forefathers all warned about this. The end of democracy and the defeat of the American Revolution will occur when the government falls into the hands of lending institutions and moneyed corporations. That's from 1816. And would you say the Federal Reserve is that? And I think it is. And it's fallen into the hands of them. And you can see what they've done with our exploded deficits. And it's not going to be pretty getting out of, but such is life. Or Andrew Jackson, on the other hand, we could go his route. And he's a little bit violent. I'm more of a pacifist. I just want him fired. He would have taken him out and had a duel to the death and whatnot, but you are a den of vipers and thieves, and by the eternal I will rout you out. Damn, that's cold. The current U.S. government, Jamie, and the 1% aren't going to get what Bitcoin really stands for, but what it stands for is freedom. Freedom from them.
The prisoner wishes to say a word.
I live in